Viewer contributions make local programming possible on WNIN. Become a member of WNIN with your contribution so we can continue to make this programming available. Visit WNIN.org and click on the donate button.
Good afternoon, friends. You are in for a treat. Brad Niemeier has created something pretty awesome here throughout Kentucky and Indiana. Brad is a proud graduate of Purdue University, where you might not know this, but he was actually a walk-on for the football team as a lineman. That's pretty bold. And studied and graduated with a degree in hospitality and tourism management, which is pretty relevant, I guess we would all say, right? And he then went on to win a competition at Purdue that's the Burton D. Morgan Business Plan competition, where he won the grand prize of $20,000, which helped him to start this amazing business with his business partner, Chef Blake Kelker. Did I say it right? Okay. And that their first location was in Evansville. Now they are in Indianapolis and Lafayette. I'm not going to try to name them all because I'm not going to get them right, but there are 13 locations now throughout Indiana and Kentucky. In 2020, it was AZZIP Pizza was named as one of the fast casual top 100 lists, a list for brands to watch. He has been, I've gotten to know him, I've had the pleasure of knowing him as a board member for Junior Achievement. He's been a board member since 2021, is now on our executive committee, leads our J Social Innovation Challenge, and is also on our design committee for our J Discovery Center. So very, very engaged and creative brain to have with us, and we could not be more grateful. Brad and his wife Katie have 3 boys, ages 9, 7, and 4, and brand new Ruby, who is 2. And so without any further ado, please welcome my friend, Brad Niemeier.
All right, thanks for having me here today. Marcia stole all my talking points for my story now, so I don't know what I'm going to talk about. No, it's great to be here. Really appreciate all the work that the Rotary Club does for Evansville as well. And so thank you to all of you for everything you do to make AZZIP a great place to raise those 4 kids that I have now. So, yeah, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about the history of AZZIP, how we got started, a few things about what I feel like sets AZZIP apart and makes us different in ways that matter to our customers, and then a few lessons that I've learned, and then would love to answer some questions for you guys. That's always my favorite part of these talks, is getting a chance to kind of hear from you guys about what you'd want to hear more about and answer those questions. So typically whenever I go and talk to like a group of kindergartners, I'll bring some free pizza cards with me to give out to them. I didn't bring those today, so hopefully you guys can still come up with some questions without that incentive. All right, so how did I come up with the idea for AZZIP, and how did it all get started? I think it's a question I get a lot, is how'd you have the idea for AZZIP? And you know, for me, I was taking the entrepreneurship classes, and I had a professor, his name was Mike Cassidy, and he talked about being different in what matters. And I started thinking, okay, if I'm going to do a pizza restaurant, like there's a lot of pizza restaurants out there, right? And so I need to really make it different in ways that truly matter to our customers. And so started thinking about my experiences, where I like to go. And when I was at Purdue, I was a big fan of Chipotle. We would go there on Mondays with a group of guys from the football team on our day off. And I loved seeing it made right in front of you. I love that high quality food. Another thing about me, I hate onions. And so I love making sure that if I'm getting a burrito, there's no pico going into the burrito, that I'm going to take a bite of a raw onion. So, you know, I love those things about it. And at the time, nobody was really doing that for pizza. And so when I kind of realized that hey, there's this really big gap in the market. There's a billions and billions of dollar pizza industry here in the United States. And then there's this really large and growing fast casual industry. So think about Chipotle's and Five Guys and Panera Bread and those types of restaurants where it's counter service. Sometimes it's made right in front of you, sometimes it's not, but that type of restaurant. And there really was no overlap there. And so the top 100 list that Marcia mentioned, there was not a single pizza restaurant on that in 2011 list or whatever it was. And so I just very clearly was able to see that kind of that gap that was in the market and how this type of restaurant could fill that gap. I also was able to kind of clearly see in what ways would that be different that mattered to our customers. And, the personal size of it allows customers to come in and get exactly what they want on their pizza. They're not having to get a large pizza that they're sharing with their kids or their family that have different tastes. They can all get exactly what they want. We have a lot of, like my parents being a good example, customers who have been sharing a pizza for a long time, and you can tell because they come in and they order the exact same pizza, even though it's a personal pizza for both of them. So yeah, those were the ways I was going to kind of set it apart. It was also going to be fast, made right in front of you, ability to customize it, and all those things. And I think that, just being able to very clearly explain that from very early on of, all right, AZZIP's going to be the Subway of pizza or the Chipotle of pizza, made it easy to help sell that concept to the judges in the competition and then to my parents to help me, get the whole thing going. So that was the original idea. Did the business plan competition, and for the business in the competition, I printed out a list of the top 100 fast casual list, and then was able to show, like, physically giving the judges a copy of that and saying, look, there's this huge gap here, and this is how we're going to kind of take advantage of that. And I think the fact that I was able to kind of clearly show that, it's a very simple idea, and I showed a passion for this and wanting to actually do this right out of school, led to them selecting AZZIP as the $20,000 grand prize winner. Around that time then, I was trying to decide, okay, am I actually going to do this, or do I need to get some experience in the industry first? And I think that's a hard question to answer when you're a college student and you see all of your classmates are all going to get jobs at, big companies and kind of taking a much more traditional route. And so it was really scary to think about, okay, I'm going to graduate and not take a job with a big company. I'm going to go and try to do this right away. My girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, she shared a quote with me that I think she had found it on Pinterest. But it said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. And I think that really stuck with me. Like, the fact that I still remember that today, and I shared that with my parents of like, hey, this is different than what everybody else is doing. And it is scary, but maybe that's why I should be doing this instead of taking the safe route. So today I'm thankful for her browsing Pinterest that day and coming across that and then, sharing it with me. But I think also just like the fact that it really illustrated to me, like, every time in my life where those big things have come, it's because I put myself in a situation where it was scary. It was a little different than what everybody else was doing. All right, I didn't feel like I was 100%, ready to take on that challenge. But those are the opportunities, I think, that really stretch you and make you grow. And I think the walk-on football tryout was definitely another one of those things. You go as the best player on your high school team, or one of the best players on your high school team, to then you go to college and you're the very low end of the totem pole. You're at the bottom and you got to work your way up and you got to, prove your worth to the team and all those things. I think those are the kinds of moments where, yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's not the most, what you think you'd be doing, but I think those really make you grow and learn from the most. So decided to go ahead and go for it. Moved back into mom and dad's basement. Got a lot of grief from my brothers who like to make fun of me for for graduating from Purdue and then moving right back at home. But started working on it, and I teamed up with Chef Blake Kelker. I knew I wanted AZZIP to be a great product, and I didn't know anybody who was a better cook than Blake. He also had all these connections to different vendors and things like that I didn't have that practical, real world experience in. So teamed up with him. We started working on the kind of what all the menu items were going to be, what our recipes were going to be, just all the different things that go into it. And I think, it feels like a long time at the time, but now it doesn't look so long. But it was about a year and a half after graduating where we finally opened that first store on the west side. I think one of the big things I learned during that process is, one, you've really got to have belief in your idea, because if you don't believe in it and you're not, giving everything you've got to it, like nobody else is going to do it for you. And so I think really making sure you truly believe that this idea is going to work, that you're going to be able to make this happen. And then like lean into your network, in my case, my parents' network. Matt Foltz is here today. He's been a big part of the AZZIP story from the beginning, and family friends of my parents. And so there's a lot of those kind of connections that they had, that I had here in Evansville whenever I was first wanting to start AZZIP. So I think that was just a really important lesson, was to lean on those. I mean, I think people are willing to help out. They want to help family and friends. So if you have one of those situations, it's always great to be able to reach out to those people. And it takes a village. I mean, it really does. It's kind of like, raising a family with 4 kids. Like, you can't do it alone. And so find those people who are willing to help and lean on them. Yeah, and I think the community support, it really carried the brand early on, and I think it still really does. When we opened those doors for the first time on the west side, like, people were coming in from very early on, excited about a new restaurant in Evansville, but also excited because it was somebody from Evansville opening a restaurant, and it was somebody that they knew. They knew my parents, or knew my grandparents, or knew all those things, and I think that community support is carried through to today. AZZIP would not be what it is today without Evansville showing such a huge level of support from the very beginning. And so I'm so grateful for that. And, to be able to kind of immediately open and start making money at that first store was incredible for our growth and being able to do what we've done. So I think that first big lesson too is, like, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to start. I think AZZIP was far from perfect in those early days. I don't know, does anybody remember how smoky it would get sometimes in the store, and the smell? You still get a little of that from time to time. We're cooking a bunch of pizzas out in the open. But yeah, there were a lot of lessons learned along the way, and it wasn't perfect from the beginning. And we've gotten better. Certainly, there's still things we can improve on. But I think no business is going to be perfect right when you start. You've got to have the courage to do it, and then try to learn along the way and make those changes and do those things to get better as you grow. And I think that's something we've done a good job with. I think having people like my brother, Andy, now involved with AZZIP, and my dad for a long time, who have more of that engineering mindset, has definitely been a key thing for us. They were both engineers from Purdue, and they think a little differently than I do. I've got that big picture, grand idea of what AZZIP can be, and they understand a little bit more the process of how it takes to get there. You get better one little thing at a time, and you kind of keep working at it, keep every day look at how you can continue to try to improve and get a little better. So I think that's been something as we've grown, that those people being involved has been absolutely key to our success as well. Yeah, I mean, looking back, thinking back to those early days too, is a lot of fun. There were a lot of challenging times. I kind of, there was a period of time there where I look back and I'm like, we were just day to day, just trying to keep our head above the water, trying to figure out the next problem. Today I think we're a little bit more of a real company. We've got some structure in place. We've got some systems in place. And I think there's a lot of good things that we're able to do. One of the things that I think is most important that we do and continue to always focus on at AZZIP is our team and our employees. Anybody in here manage employees or work, have employees? It's one of the toughest parts of the job. Right? It is not always easy. It's not like you can create just a perfect system that's going to allow you to effectively hire and train and get the right people doing all the right things. But people are just complex. And so there's a lot of lessons we've learned along the way from that, but a lot of things that I think we do well that helps us have an employee culture at AZZIP that our employees like coming to AZZIP to work. They know they're not going to like every job that they do at AZZIP. Not many people like, mopping at the end of the night or doing dishes, other than maybe my mom. But that takes a special kind of person to like those kind of tasks. But those jobs aren't fun. But if you enjoy the people that you're around, and if you kind of see the bigger picture and the vision for it, I think you can really enjoy your job even when those tasks aren't fun. So when we hire, we try to find really good people that are have a couple of traits that we're looking for, like hard work, accountability, positive attitude, and teamwork. Those are the big four things that we're really looking for in new employees. We do try to screen for those by having a little different application than most. Ours is more open-ended. It's tell us about yourself. What's the proudest you've ever been on something you've accomplished? Questions like that allow them to really show who they are. And then in the interview process, one of my favorite questions we have is, what's your favorite thing about your last job? And I think that's a question that a lot of people can't find a favorite thing about their last job, and their last job, don't get me wrong, might have sucked, might have been terrible, might have been a terrible job. But if you can't find one positive thing about that last job, then it might be that you don't have a positive attitude. It might be that you're more of a negative person. And so we try to really find those positive people, because I think the positivity, it really is something that is, if having that one negative employee come in on a shift, it really brings the whole mood of everybody down. So we're always looking for those positive people and making sure that we have people that can find the positive out of any situation. We also then, once we get the right employees on board, we try to treat them well. We try to pay well. We our base pay is almost $16 an hour for our entry level positions. We're able to really attract a lot of candidates. I think we hire about 10% of all applicants at AZZIP, and so able to be very selective. Whenever a new hire or a new employee starts, they get a box shipped to their house that has all their employee swag in it, and their shirts and their coupons to give to family and friends, and stickers and a AZZIP cup and all those things. I think sending that to their house is an important part of that. So they get mail at their house, they get to open it at home, they get to share that with family and friends. Instead of just giving those things to them at work, we send it to their house. We also do something called home office takeovers. It's been a little bit hectic trying to get all those scheduled these days, but home office staff will show up at a store unannounced. We send the team home with pay for the day, and then we work the shift for them. I think that's just a great way to stay in touch with what our teams are dealing with in the store, to know what it's like to still work all those positions, to mop the floor and do the dishes at the end of the night and all those things. It's a great chance to connect with customers and hear about what their experience is like are in the store, and really see kind of the store and how it operates from a on a day-to-day basis. But I think it's another great way to reward our teams and just show them, like, hey, we understand what you're going through as well. And so I think just trying to do that and then spread that culture, not just here in Evansville, but to all of our 13 locations, is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have. And I think just making sure that we keep our general managers and our assistant managers really connected is super important. We have them into Evansville quarterly to have a meeting with all our GMs and AGMs, so that they feel like they're really a part of the bigger AZZIP too, especially those stores that are up in Lafayette and West Lafayette, or down in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Like, they don't, if we don't have them together often, like, they just start to feel disconnected from AZZIP, and I think that is a really tough thing. They're kind of our conduit to the stores in a lot of ways, and so they do a lot of the messaging for us and relaying of communication and things like that. And so keeping them connected is a really, really important part of keeping that culture strong across all of our locations. I got a few more kind of things to go over, and then want to open it up for questions. So, I think a few of the lessons I've learned along the way. One is you got to show up kind of with humility every day. If you're not willing to do all those jobs as a leader of AZZIP, if I'm not willing to do all those jobs when I go into the store, like helping, pick up trays in the dining room and, doing those things, then I think that is something that carries through to our team, to our managers. We don't have a office at the location for the manager. Whenever the shift's going on and customers are in there, they're right on the line, helping make pizzas. So we try to model that when we're in there as well. I think every stage of this business, as it's grown too, it's kind of been a new opportunity for me to learn and to learn how I need to change as a leader. I worked some with Tad Dickel. Some of you guys might know Tad. He helped me I'd never had a manager before, really, or a boss. And so he kind of helped me understand, okay, as you grow in this business, as the business grows, like your leadership style has to grow with it too. I was very used to that one-on-one coaching and feedback type of mentality from sports growing up, where, you make a mistake, the coach is there to correct you. They can, give you that feedback right away. When you have 350 employees, it's harder to be able to give that direct feedback. You really can't. And so you got to learn how to start leading through others. Kind of have to make these adjustments to your leadership style to be able to manage a larger organization. And I think there's been those steps of learning every kind of step along the way. And I think just having the humility to say, okay, I need help here. I want to become a better leader. How do I do that? Reaching out to somebody was a really important part of my growth and development. Second lesson, I think, is you've got to really build people up, and you got to give them the responsibility. You got to trust them, and your company's only going to grow as your leaders grow. And so what we really try to do is invest in those coaching and giving responsibility early. And a lot of times, it's some of our employees, AZZIP is their very first job they've ever had. So we've got to teach them. It's kind of our duty as a employer, especially of young people, like, how do we teach them what it's like to be a good employee, what it's like to have accountability and to provide great customer service? And I think it's an awesome role to have, because we're able to kind of give them skills and a foundation that they're able to take to other jobs and other careers as they grow. And I would love for AZZIP to someday be known, as a place like, if you're hiring for a job and you see AZZIP on the resume, like, that's a real positive thing. They've had those customer service skills. They've been developed in these different areas. And so that's I think such a huge part of our responsibility. And what we're trying to do is build these leaders so that, whether they work at AZZIP long term or go work somewhere else, we want to be able to help them along in their journey as well. I think another thing I've learned is, like, systems are going to be better than heroics, or better than, people trying to kind of muscle through it and grit through it. As we continue to grow and, have goals of getting to 30 or 40 locations, it's going to take repeatability and training and being able to put those systems in place and really work on your business, not just in your business, is such an important thing. I think it's so much easier to just kind of fight those everyday fires and to do those things without addressing the larger kind of concerns. And so we always try to make sure, if we're having, consistent issues, that we're kind of looking at what the root cause of those are, what we need to do. Are there systems we need to put in place to make sure that we can fix those? The next one is, I think, all about creativity. And creativity is a big part of AZZIP and the kind of a cornerstone of AZZIP. Where slogan is create something delicious. Like, we want every customer that comes into AZZIP to be able to create something delicious. So, for us, a lot of times that's some pretty fun, weird, outside the box pizzas. You guys might know us for, like, the March Crabness or the Mac Daddy or, all those different things. And so really leaning into that, embracing that. Like, for us, a great pizza isn't something that everybody loves. It's something, or that everybody even just likes. It's something that those few people that love it, like, really love it. I think the March Crabness is our best example of that. Like, I hear people all the time say that they don't like the March Crabness. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. That's kind of what it's supposed to be, because there's the people that love it come, 20 times in the month. So that's what we really want, is to find those pizzas that some people really, really, really love. And I think Chef Blake's done such a great job with that. And, you know, we have a Pizza of the Month club that has 750 members that they get a monthly pizza. And so it's just become such a big part of our brand. And I think that helps create the loyalty with our customers. And I think you see that with like what rate the Pizza of the Months get ordered at different stores. The stores like in Evansville that our customers have grown to trust us. They know that, yeah, this might sound weird, but it's probably going to taste good, is way higher than the stores where we're brand new. Like customers just don't trust us quite yet with some of those weird concoctions. So I think it's just a great way to build that loyalty with our customer base. And then finally, I think, you've got to be able to strike a balance with your family life or your outside of work life and your work life. I think it's a hard thing to do. I don't think my wife, Katie, would be, or any of the kids would be very happy if I, worked every Friday night at the store. And so I think there's a balance there. And it's kind of, easy to let it slide one way or the other. And you've got to always be kind of looking out for where that needs to be. Katie kind of knows that in March, I'm going to be a little busier and, be at the store more and be doing those things. But then I can kind of make up for it in other times. And so I think that's something we're always trying to do is make sure that we've kind of got that in a good place. I try to always be mindful of those opportunities to bring the kids along and involve them in things if I can. Recently we had Devin Mockabee come into our Purdue location and sign autographs for customers. And so I got to bring two of the boys up with me to do that. And, the fact that they were able to come along for that trip, I was still able to get work done, but slightly less than I would have probably without them there. But it was a great experience for them. And it was, kind of showed them a different side of the business and what it's like. So I think always looking for those opportunities as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of the AZZIP story and some different things I've learned along the way. And, it's been quite the journey. I think every system and every process and every way we thought we would do things when we first started AZZIP has changed in some way. We always I saw during your pledge, thinking about the different ways to make decisions. And we kind of think of that in a similar way. We think, okay, how's this going to impact the customer? How's this going to impact our employees, and then how's it going to impact the business? And so trying to weigh those three things can be a challenge at times. Sometimes you have to make a decision that's something much more geared towards the customer or for employees, but we're just trying to always take those three things into account when we're making those decisions. I can't imagine doing anything else other than AZZIP these days, and been just so grateful to have the opportunity, have the support of Evansville, and to be able to help make AZZIP into what it is today. So would love to answer some questions. Thank you.
Brad, this is Jeff. I'm Jeffrey Berger. You don't know me, but you know my three daughters, Maddie Berger, Melanie, and now Mallory. Yep. All three of my daughters have one's right now, and two graduated from school and are doing great things. They've made a lot of friends there. You've created. Thank you for what you guys have done, because they've learned about customer service. They've learned about responsibility, and thank you for giving them the opportunity. It means a lot. I worked in a family grocery store as a kid, so I know how important it is that they work locally with someone that cares about the people that are part of their team.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for having helped raise great employees for us too. So
my pleasure.
Really appreciate
my pleasure.
That.
My youngest couldn't wait. She turned 16 and she was just dying to get a job with you guys.
Yes.
So that speaks a lot from the experience my two other daughters had. Question for you. I know you had used to have a place in Carbondale. And
in Champaign.
In Champaign.
Yeah.
So what have been your challenges? You've had a lot of great success. Where have your challenges come from? Yeah,
I think that Champaign store was our first outside of Evansville. We had wanted to do a college town. Originally thought that the first one would be at Purdue, and it didn't work out for some reasons with the real estate and the landlord. So I thought, going to a college town was something that I really wanted to do. And I think at the time, we just didn't know our customer base well enough yet. We didn't know that I thought it would be great for college students, and we get a lot of support from college students now. But just didn't quite understand yet. I think that our customer base is maybe a little bit older than that. Our core base, it's families, it's young professionals, it's really it's everybody too. And that was such a the location in Champaign was right on U of I's campus, and it was heavily foot traffic only. The summers were dead. The fall break, Christmas break. You don't realize how many breaks college students have until you have a business on a college campus, and you're like, oh, maybe we should have counted these up before, and so there was just that constant ebb and flow. And then I think we just didn't get, that store never had the kind of the culture and everything on the right foot from the beginning. And we realized from that just how hard that is to change, and so it ended up being a situation where, we had to focus on the stores that were doing really well. I think, long term, we could have maybe make it a break even type of store for us, but it just wasn't worth it to us to invest all that time and effort in a store where we didn't feel like AZZIP when we went in there. It didn't feel like, our thing. And so we took a lot of lessons from it, but had to, after a couple of years operating there, kind of go a different direction. But it was definitely one of the biggest challenges, we've had, and trying to figure out how to do all that was a challenge. But, I'm thankful for it because I think it has made us a better company. Another one I think of is obviously COVID. That was a big change for everybody. It led to online ordering for us, and it was one of those, in the moment, that's not the direction we wanted to go. We wanted to bring our customers in to experience AZZIP, right in front of them. And I always thought that was so important. It was a better product when you got it fresh, right out of the oven. And so I wanted to keep that as much as I could. COVID kind of forced our hand. We had to have online ordering and add that, and then once some of those restrictions were lifted, you can't quite take that away. But I think it's led to a lot of really good positive things for our business. Now we have, a back make line and oven and cut station for at a lot of our stores for those online orders. So we're not kind of, making pizzas right in front of customers that have been waiting. I think that was one of the biggest challenges of it once things opened back up. But, it's one of those things that come along and you think, how challenging it is and how tough it is. But then in the long term, it ends up being a good thing for your business, and you're able to pivot and kind of change how you do things and able to meet customer demand a lot better now because of it.
Hi, so thank you so much for your presentation. We spent a lot of money at AZZIP. My 14-year-old thinks pizza's a food group, so that's kind of where we are. But just kind of hearing like your story and where you've kind of been, West Lafayette makes sense, College Town, Purdue, Bowling Green. So what are the influences for you to decide where to build a new store? And do you have some other towns in mind coming up that you'd like to expand to?
Yeah, for a long time, it was kind of just had to be gut feel because, we didn't have a lot of data yet on, who our customers were and what they, I think we thought certain things about or made some assumptions, I guess. And so a lot of it was gut feel. After the Champaign store closed, we knew we wanted to continue doing those. We always liked the smaller towns because we felt like we could stand out more. We felt like it was more of a challenge to go into like Indianapolis or Nashville or wherever and stand out from the other restaurants. So that's more of what we'd always kind of targeted. We also felt like we could make more of an impact in those towns with schools and churches and different fundraisers for different groups, and so that's why we targeted those. I think now we've grown to a point where we have a lot more brand recognition in Indiana, and so Indianapolis has been a market now that we've started to grow into. So we do have 2 locations in Indy. Would like to continue to grow that to get some scale there. But the things we're really looking for when we look at a market is like, okay, we want to be around a lot of families because we're such a good option, I think, for a family that everybody has different taste preferences and things like that. And so, the average household size is a metric we look at a lot. We also look at daytime population in that area because we want people working in the area too. We do a great lunch business and dinner business, and so we want some place that, can do both of those things. So those are just a couple of the metrics we look at. We've used some AI tools to kind of look at all of our locations and the foot traffic at those and where it thinks we would do well. using some of that, but it's still a lot of gut feel too, of like what feels right, and where do we think this will do best. So
Enjoyed your presentation. Boiler
Thank
up.
you. Boiler up. Yeah.
From a fellow Boilermaker. So a couple questions. One is, do you feel like you're growing fast enough? And tied into that, what about franchising versus company-owned stores? A lot of times when you look in an industry, you see that there are two main competitors, like Lowe's and Home Depot, or Ford and GM, or you could go on with those kind of comparisons. And is AZZIP going to be one of those two, or maybe there could be three, who knows? But if you have an opportunity here, and sometimes maybe you have to grow faster than you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think our strategy has been much more about being more of a regional growth. And so what I feel like is if we can grow really strong in Indiana, in Kentucky, and we've kind of put our 4-hour radius on ourselves for right now because we like to be able to make a day trip to the store. We can have that strength and that foothold just in this region. And so I look at a company like In-N-Out, for example, that only was in California, right? People across the country knew about In-N-Out, but you could only get it when you went to California. And I love that concept of having that very regional company. I think, I don't think there's necessarily, there's some marketing benefits of having a national company and getting on, the big ESPN, presentation or commercials and things like that you can do if you don't have that scale. But I just think there's something for AZZIP to be said for starting here in Indiana, starting with an idea at Purdue, from Evansville. There's a lot of strength in this regional growth. And so I think that's, from our perspective, our strategy for going forward. Just from a franchising versus the company-owned model like we do it today, there's pluses and minuses to both. I think the franchising model, we could certainly grow a lot quicker. Obviously not having to put up all the money up front for every one of those locations, but you give up a level of control and of right now we're owned by my family and by Blake Kelker, and so when we make decisions, we don't have other investors and things that we've got to make sure that they're getting a return on their investment as well. And so I think it's allowed us to make decisions that are a little more long-term focused sometimes about building AZZIP in a way that we really want to for the long term. I think during the inflationary period we've been in, we've been a little slower than most to raise our prices in a way that I think sets us up to be a better value long term for our customers. And so I think if we had a bunch of franchisees, they would have been pushing us to raise prices a little quicker so that they could meet their returns as well. And so I think it's just things like that we've enjoyed not having some of that outside pressures to do certain things. And I think we can still be very competitive, just being more of a regional company and letting that growth kind of come with time.
So Blake I'm sorry, I called you Blake. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My bad. Brad, as someone who's not originally from the area but has deeply come to appreciate the geographical divide that comes along Pigeon Creek over the years, it's a two-part question. Okay. First of all, because I landed in Newburgh, so how well does the West Sider perform in Newburgh compared to other places? And when does Newburgh get their own pizza? Either the Newburger or the Cake Eater, something like that. Yeah. When's it coming?
I don't have the exact data in front of me on the performance. I know it still sells really well. I think Evansville as a whole loves the Grippos and the ski on a pizza. So I don't think that's too hard of a sell even over there. We call it the West Sider even outside of Evansville now. We had for a while called it the Evil Pig, but it got confusing with menus and stuff. So we ended up going back to West Sider. But no, I mean I think we'll. The Cake Eater, I think it has a nice ring to it. I think it could be a good pizza. I got to figure out exactly what will go on there. Something bougie, that's for sure.
Brad, thank you so much for this. I've tucked away several nuggets of wisdom that I plan to use later shamelessly. But probably 3 years into your operation, you had your first, I'm guessing your first real competitor in the form of Mod Pizza on the east side. Did their opening change your calculation in any way and cause you to pivot, or did you maintain the same course you were on?
Yeah, I've always thought competition's a good thing. When I first kind of had the idea, and I mentioned that there weren't any others on that top 100 list, I was able to find Mod had just started and Blaze had just started, out on the West Coast. So it was almost validation. Okay, this is working. This is a good idea. Like others, it was a good thing to see. And then when they came to Evansville, I think it was definitely maybe a little nervous at first. Like how are we going to stack up? We had already been competing with them I think it was there's a Blaze Pizza in Bowling Green. That was our first time of sharing a market with one of them. But I think from a customer perspective, it's going to make us better by just having to be on the top of our game. So we've always known that is like I don't look at it as a negative really to have another one in market. We're in Indy now. Obviously, we're going to be competing pretty regularly with those concepts. And I think if we do what we do, if we execute on what we do really well, like I think that we compete and stack up very well against those other concepts. I know from what data is out there, like our average unit volume is larger than both of those concepts. Customer reviews are better than both of those concepts. I'm sure it did slow maybe some of our growth down in Evansville, but it's hard to really tell too much. I think any concept's always going to have its fans. You're going to have people that like AZZIP better or Mod better. But I think just trying to make sure that every time a customer comes into AZZIP, we're treating them the right way. We're making their pizza how they want it. We're executing on our concept and doing our thing. I feel very confident that we'll be okay to compete with whoever it is that comes into our market, or if we go to another market where they're already at. So I think it just is something to be aware of. You can't be blind to it either, but we try to just make sure we're doing our things, and we have things that set us apart from them, like the pizza of the month, and I think that we're able to really rely on as well. So yeah, good question.
So Brad, looks like we're running out of time, but
Okay.
if you're willing to stick around for a few more minutes
Yeah,
in case
happy
anybody
to.
has follow-up
Happy
questions.
to.
So thank you.
Thank you.